based on your preference.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We have so many people here. Hey.
How's everyone's Tuesday going? Anything fun happening? Is everyone freezing cold? Anyone not cold? I'm cold.
I kind of think it's finally nice.
Yeah.
I had that same thought today. I walked my dogs this morning and I got like a big old winter coat on, and then I was walking and I was like, why am I so layered up? It's actually really nice out. I've lived in Colorado for so long, you'd think I'd be used to this now. I'm not.
The best thing about being online is that I can just avoid going out when it snows. So like the last time this happened, I didn't leave my house and I was just like cozy and warm indoors. And the same for today. And like yesterday, I just did not go anywhere because I got everything that I need right here and I'm just working online anyways. So I've hacked the system, I believe. I'm just gonna wait till the sun comes out.
No, I have dogs. I walk them 3 miles a day. I can't escape it.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's average for me. That's like a normal day.
It's impressive.
Nah. I mean,
every day it seems impressive.
I mean, think about like those of you guys who live sort of close to campus, but not that close, but you walk most of the time. Like that's probably about 3 miles. Or just walking across campus all the time. That adds up. I just do it all in 3 goes instead of sporadically throughout the day now. Oh, I'm with you. I don't know if your name is pronounced Gilly or Jilly. If you want to correct me, call yourself.
It's Gilly.
Gilly, thank you. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I also don't live in Boulder, so I like bus everywhere. Although now I'm just not going anywhere.
That certainly makes it easier.
Definitely does.
Okay, well, I think we have a bunch of people and we'll let people kind of filter in, but I just wanted to get started. So my name is Varsha and this is a picture of me because I have a mask on my face. So this is what I look like. If you ever see me, come say hi. I'm the graduate liaison for the College of Engineering. So there's, I think, like 5 or 6 of us throughout the different colleges, and we help put on workshops and kind of like voice to the graduate school and career services about the professional development needs of the graduate students. And I'm the one for engineering specifically. And kind of one of the things that we were hearing a lot last year was the need to being better at presenting. So a lot of our comprehensive exams and dissertations really rely on us being good presenters, answering questions. And then especially now in the Zoom era, we're doing so many more, like all of our presentations are online as well. And so we wanted to kind of put together a workshop to help people kind of address some of those challenges. And so I'm very excited to have 2 members of the group enACTs to help us with these challenges. As scientists, I think this is like probably one of the best things that we can get better at. So I want to introduce Sarah and Amanda Rose, and they're both graduate students in theater, and they founded, did you guys found this group? enACTs? It's exciting. And so they use, techniques that are learned in theater and performance arts and help kind of teach those and decide how those are applicable to other parts of content areas in the CU Boulder community. And they're going to put what is enACTs? It's the organization that these two lovely ladies started. So I just want to say, before I hand it over to them, I'm going to be monitoring the chat. And so if anybody has any burning questions, please put them in there and I can pause Sarah and Amanda Rose while they're presenting, but this is going to be really interactive. So we're going to get in breakout rooms pretty quickly as well. And we're also going to have a time at the very end for Q&A. And so we can kind of have more of a discussion there as well. And one last thing, I have a feedback form and like a virtual suggestion box that I'm going to put into the chat towards the very end. So please hang out until you get that link, and then we can just to make sure that we record any feedback that you guys might have for this workshop. And with that, I will hand it over to Sarah and Amanda Rose.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is Sarah and I am Amanda Rose. And as Varsha already said, we are both in the PhD program in the Department of Theater and Performance Studies. And Sarah, would you like to introduce your research real quick?
Yeah, so I am currently a second-year PhD student, and my work focuses on Afrocentric feminism, specifically using different applied theater techniques and a combination of speech and language hearing sciences techniques to vocally empower young women to author their own decolonial identities.
Awesome. My name is Amanda Rose, and I study consent in unscripted interactions between actors and audience members. Because of this, I usually focus on if you know what immersive theater is, or if you have heard of LARP or other performative gaming structures. So I focus, all of those things fall under the umbrella of immersive performance, but not everybody is familiar with that term. So that's just a little bit about
both of our work. Yeah, and both of our work pretty much involves kind of using non-script based work, and a lot of it is working with people who don't have theater backgrounds and people who wouldn't identify themselves as actors in any way. So in a lot of ways, we do that kind of work on a day-to-day basis as well.
Awesome. You guys aren't really here for that, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into it.
So first of all, kind of to get us started, what comes to your mind when you think about acting or performance or theater in general? Because, you know, the first kind of thing that people always tell us is like, why are these two weird theater people here? What do you even do as a theater PhD student? And what is your applicability to anything in the sciences? So if you can just pop it into the chat box, maybe just like a word or two. Oh, Jilly's an actor. Great, that's awesome. So if you can just put it into the chat box, maybe a word or two, a sentence, what you think of people or what you perceive acting to be. And there are no wrong answers. There's simply just what you think.
And feel free to badly stereotype actors. Who are we and what do we do?
Okay, we got Shakespeare, we got communicating perspective, performative, telling stories. Oh gosh, these are coming in faster than I can read.
Speaking in front of groups, taking on someone who you aren't necessarily.
Performing for entertainment.
Sharing stories, I like that one.
Putting yourself in a persona, okay.
Yeah, putting yourself in a persona that is not you or getting into a role. I'm seeing a lot.
A well-paid
there.
A well-paid profession. I wish that were true.
Awesome. A performance that engages with others.
Representing a role or a thing. Okay, so, and feel free to like kind of continue putting your thoughts in the chat as you think of them. You're welcome to continue using the chat box function throughout this entire presentation to continue engaging with this and with anything that we're talking about. But a lot of you mentioned something that is engaging, stepping into a different role, providing entertainment. And these are all things that we have to utilize when we present. Because when you're presenting, what you don't realize is that you are also performing. You are center stage. It's kind of like you are in that spotlight, and in a way, you're acting. The personality that I am when I am presenting in front of my students as an instructor is very different from the personality that I carry when I'm presenting for a conference in front of my academic peers or my colleagues. And those are two very different personalities, but they're all still me. And that's something that's really important for us to think about, of just because we are researchers or scientists or educators doesn't mean that that is your one role. Acting and performance are everywhere, and we do them every single day. So we want to encourage you to think of yourselves throughout today, and hopefully in the future as well, of taking on these acting personas, of how do we perform when we present our research, and why do we need to perform when we present our research? What is important about that? So Amanda Rose, if you want to switch over.
Yeah, I was just supporting what you were saying in the chat.
There we go.
For people who prefer to read. So we want to tie this in a little bit to science, and I'm going to steal some language and maybe misappropriate it because I am not a scientist, but please bear with me. So most of us are performing most of the time, right? If you and I were to go on a date, I would put together a public persona based on the way that you react to me throughout that interaction, throughout that date, that isn't necessarily the same way I interact with Sarah, who happens to be my best friend, right? And I would read social cues from you, my date, my audience, and I would probably adjust my performance based on the reactions that I'm getting. We do this constantly. And thinking about being on Zoom right now, most of us tend to stare at that second box at ourselves a lot of the time. And that's because we're curating our performance even on Zoom. And that comes down to a self-defense mechanism because a lot of us feel vulnerable when we are being looked at publicly. And in Zoom, you never really know if people are looking at you or not, unless your video's off, and then you're relatively sure they're not looking at you live in the moment. So public speaking comes down to, yeah, relatively sure. If I have a photo up, so if I turn my video off, you might be looking at my photo. I don't know. I can't tell because we can't establish eye contact very well via Zoom. So knowing that we're constantly creating a persona, presenting and performing a role comes down to using observation and interpretation of the data that you're putting out there or how you're interacting with people. So one of the things that we look to when we're presenting is using the tools you already have at hand. You're using your voice, you're using your body, you're using your intellectual capacity. So one of the ways to hone your presenting persona is to notice the things that you already do and determine whether you need to dial them up or dial them down a little bit and determine what adjustments you can make. We do this, I just use the example of on a date. On a date, if I were to be on a date with you, I would be reading you as my audience and reacting to you and making adjustments in real time. Presenting, it's a little bit harder because most of the time, your audience isn't really giving transparent social cues. Because we're so trained that during a presentation, you sit there silently, maybe you lean forward attentively, you make eye contact if you can, and those are trained behaviors, which makes it hard to read how our audience feels about us. So in a moment, we are going to break you up into breakout rooms to give you a time to use this time as an experiment. And we will ask you to rotate through and one person at a time, just speak. Just introduce your research, right? A lot of the time we've rehearsed that. Maybe you haven't, that's okay. But you'll take a few moments to speak. And while people are speaking, I want you to observe the physical details and the vocal details that you're seeing. Me, I just did this and I registered it as soon as I did. I often drop the end of my sentences as myself, right? I said, observe the physical details and the vocal details that you're seeing. And seeing isn't very clear there. That's a vocal detail. Notice those things. Notice that I speak with my hands a lot. Notice that I also swivel in my chair very often, even when I try not to. And you would just be pointing out these things. Amanda Rose, I noticed that you're swiveling in your chair and speaking with your hands, and I noticed that you're dropping the ends of your sentences pretty frequently. You're noticing those things about me subconsciously all the time. We're just asking you to make those observations consciously now. And then we're asking you to go one step further and say, how can I interpret the things that I'm observing? What is the way that I am speaking right now tell you as the audience about my persona? I'm moving my hands, I'm swiveling in my chair, maybe I'm coming across loudly on your speakers, maybe you're missing the ends of my words because I tend to drop the end of my sentences. What is that? How are you interpreting that? Does anybody want to just call one of those out for me? Call yourself into the space or type it into the box. I'm noticing you talk with your hands, and that makes me feel like your persona is this, or that makes you seem aggressive to me, or that makes you seem outgoing to me. How are you interpreting that as an audience member?
Yeah, I can jump in with
Go
your
for it,
hands in
Molly.
your general speech pattern. You seem really enthusiastic.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly, for doing that. I also got A here says, speaking with my hands, says that I'm passionate. The chair swivel says that I'm maybe a little bit nervous. Megan jumps in and kind of goes both of those, right? Swiveling could be that I'm energized or that I'm nervous. Awesome. So as a speaker, knowing these things, knowing, oh, my audience is interpreting me as nervous right now, maybe I'll shift to a stationary chair. It's that simple. So we're going to ask you to go into breakout rooms and speak for a moment, introduce yourself, introduce your research, and say what you're most excited about your research. And we're going to ask everybody else to notice and observe some of the details of your speech pattern, of your presentation, and interpret those. Sarah, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, and before we kind of put you out into breakout groups, one of the comments that came into the chat was a lot of these are gendered, and that is definitely true. So not only a lot of like the physical characteristics that we put on take like what we believe within our socially constructed concept of what gender is, and different like feminine versus masculine traits. There's a lot that we put out there, but then there's also a very different way where society has been trained to view, for example, a female-oriented speaker, or for example, a woman of color, or someone who is young. And there are all these different factors that certainly make up our identity that you can't kind of like you can't rid yourself of those. And it's working around those. So for example, when I enter a room or when I present at a conference, I know that I am a young scholar. I know that I am an international person. I am a woman of color. And these are all things that I know some people might perceive me or kind of try and undermine my speech in certain ways, or try and ask me specific questions. And these are all part of these observations of what are things about myself that I know, and how can I elevate these different characteristics, or how can I use these factors? So yes, definitely these gender perspectives are very important to keep in mind. And these are things that we encourage you to think of as you go on with this observation. Okay, and another person just said it's also very different from a date because the one-to-many nature of the presentation, you might have people who are contradictory interpretations in the audience. That is absolutely true. So these are all very different things, and we're going to get a chance to practice a little bit of this in a minute. So in your breakout groups, we want to find out what excites you about this research, because here is one of the biggest issues that we kind of run into of we're very passionate about our research. And I know that you're all passionate about your research, or else you would not be getting these PhDs right now. It is too much torture if you're not passionate about it. And so we love what we do, but sometimes there's this like little barrier of like, well, how do we talk about this? How do I talk about my teeny tiny little niche subject that I know about really, really well, but my audience members might not know as much about. And so in our breakout groups, we want to encourage you to just take turns. So in 1 minute, kind of speak about what is something that excites you about your research. And you're just going to be talking normally. This does not have to be perfect sentences. This does not have to be you monitoring your speech or filtering what you're saying. This is just a chance for you to speak about your research, something that you know really, really well, and just speak about it. And you can, a lot of these people you might know already, some folks might be new to you. So get a chance to speak about it. And then while you're doing that, afterwards, we want you to think about and observe, pay attention to these physical details, to these vocal details, and interpret your persona of like, what are you doing? Are you wiggling your fingers? Also, another thing to note is that we're presenting on Zoom at the moment. We can't see anything of you from like below your shoulders. Like I'm using my hands at the moment and you can't necessarily see that, but you can kind of see me shaking a bit. So, you know, this could be me like nervous, like wiggling over here. This could be just like moving my arms, which is what I'm doing. So these are all things to think about of, are you standing right now? Are you sitting down? Are you on a couch? Who's around you? What is going on? So think about all these things as you kind of give your 1 minute presentation. And then for the people who are listening to you, make sure that you pay attention to, where are their eyes going? Are they looking straight at the screen? Is their head kind of tilted? Have they leaned in? What is going on? And these are all things that we want to speak about and to think of observing other presenters, the other people who you might be with in your group today. They might teach you something, or they might have an attribute of a presentation skill that you might not have. And then that is something that you might want to adopt. Or it might be something that you notice about, oh, they fidget a lot with their hands. I do that too. And that is something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so if we can, and then Amanda, if you can switch over to the Mentimeter code. So in your groups, each one of you will take 1 minute to speak about your research and have this like personal reflection of observing yourself. And this is not saying horrible things about yourself. This is just supposed to be about observing, what do you notice? What are things that you know that you do? And in this Menti code, so you'll go to menti.com and you'll pop in this little code. So yeah, thank you, Varsha, for putting that in there. And then you will speak about 3 specific things that you have noticed about your own behavior. And then when we switch over, for those of you who are going to be observing, you will pop in 3 things that you noticed other people doing. Okay, and this is all anonymous, so we'll see it generate as a word cloud. Any thoughts or questions about these breakout groups? Varsha, be nice. Yes.
I actually do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since we're going to be observing each other, or even ourselves, right? Doesn't that observation inherently make our performance not honest? Because we're now looking for what we're doing?
So that's definitely a big part of it. But also, when we perform, there's always going to be an audience. There's no way that you will perform for yourself. Like you can practice presenting in front of the mirror, but then even then you've got like an audience, which is like yourself, and you're like reflecting into the mirror kind of thing. But you're always going to have an audience, and your audience is always going to have preconceived notions or ideas about what they believe a good presenter is, or about what they believe their own like what your research is about, and so on and so forth. And they're always going to have these biases because we're human. Like you can't eradicate bias from humans. And so you carry those, and so do your audience members. And the whole purpose of this exercise today is to kind of practice this this presentation or representing ourselves in a way that is in a safe space, in a way that is not judgmental. truly believe that none of the people here are out to get anyone of like, haha, look at that, you can't present, out of the PhD you go. And so this is not the purpose of this exercise, but it's mostly just thinking about reflecting, because it's also like, so for example, Amanda Rose and I are very close, and we spend a lot of our time together, both in our like personal life and in our academic life and conference life and kind of everything. And we present and we perform a lot. And there are things that I notice about myself, or things that Amanda Rose has pointed out about the way that I present and about certain tics that I've got that I didn't know about. And I would never have noticed those had she not mentioned them and had she not pointed them out to me. And so there's something that's really valuable in hearing someone else's perspective who's seeing you from the outside. Amanda Rose, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered most of it, but I would also just say that generally when you're presenting, you're not 100% being your earnest, true self either. It is a rehearsed performance and you know people are watching you. So because we're talking about specifically presentational speaking, I think it works.
All right, are we ready for the breakout rooms?
I think so.
All right, everyone, here we go.
Hello, welcome back. Wait, I can't now see if everyone's back or not, so can someone just tell me?
I can tell you, people are still filtering.
Oh, I
back.
just saw Molly.
Yeah, still coming back in.
Yeah, there's like 20 seconds for the breakout rooms.
Okay. All right, hello everyone. How did that go? Was this like the worst thing that we could have ever possibly asked you to do? No one's even moving. Oh boy, okay. Scarred you for life. I apologize.
It was a pretty fun time. It was mostly really nice. People just built each other up.
See, there we go. That's
And
good.
we will come back to that in a second.
The 1 minute thing, I mean, I think we needed elevator pitches, which we didn't have. And I think we were ad-libbing and we never got through whatever we wanted to say.
Our group, everyone spoke for about 30 seconds. And then we just had a great conversation about everything.
Good.
That is very good. Okay, I'm gonna take this as everyone is now back into the room again. Is that correct? Cool. Okay, so we asked you to do this very, very tough thing. And I didn't mention how tough this was when I was explaining it, but what do you observe about yourself is something that's really hard to do, especially when you're not filmed. So for example, I have noticed about myself when this is after seeing a video recording of myself, I will usually stand, and you can't see it now because I'm sitting down, but I will like hold like I'll just do this. And it's like, I don't know why I do that, but I sometimes just do this, or I'll just do that as I'm standing and speaking, even if I like move my hands and it's like, huh, this is really weird. Or sometimes I'll do that. And it's something that I wouldn't have ever noticed had I not done this exercise of like observing something about myself. So these are all the points that all of you put in your reflections. And for those of you who have not used Mentimeter before, the bigger the word, the more people have mentioned that. So we're seeing hands a lot. Hands, yes, we've all got hands. What about hands? Does anyone feel comfortable elaborating on maybe one of the things that you mentioned, or maybe for the people who put hands, since there seems to be a lot of people spoke about hands, would you feel comfortable calling yourself into the space and telling us a little bit more about what you mean or what you observed, or kind of elaborating on this process?
Well, I'll just
I'd be
mention
happy
that
to
in general, sorry, and then you can go. In general, I definitely speak with my hands, but like you can even see right here, like here I am moving my hands, they're kind of below the edge of the screen. And maybe if I do these broad gestures, you see it, but making sure that if you are a person who speaks with your hands a lot, maybe even turning the camera down slightly and making sure that it sort of stays in the view could be useful or something like that. But then I also feel like some people would probably say seeing all that hand motion might be distracting too. That was a note that I got, was I use my cursor. I actually shared my screen and I move my cursor around and circle things and stuff. And I never thought that that could be a distracting thing, but that's kind of the feedback I got. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Hands are definitely a weird thing. And we're going to talk about Zoom presentations in a little bit, but hands are weird. You can use your hands to kind of point at something or gesture. But if I'm doing this, then this is weird. You should not be presenting if you're doing your hands like this, unless you're doing some kind of interpretive dance, which I don't believe any of you are. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are, that's awesome. Please let us know. Okay, someone else said, so trailing. Would anyone like to speak about that one? Or something else that's on there? Any other observations or thoughts?
I actually noticed people's breath the most. I noticed holding breath and sighing while speaking. We're probably all kind of tired right now, so it's near the end of the semester. So that sort of it added an emotional quality to the things that they were saying.
Yeah, so that's a great one. So thinking about, and I can move on to the next one over here, of what did you observe about other people? And breathing is definitely a big part. How many of you found it easier to observe breathing patterns and observe other people than to observe it in yourself? So were you noticing when you were like holding back your breath, or when you're speaking too quickly, or when you were kind of monotone? Were you able to do that with yourself?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot we were talking about ourselves for a
No,
second.
you're totally fine. But tone back.
Same. I think it's a project, like I notice it in others because I notice it in myself. I hold my breath quite a bit when I'm speaking.
Great. So thank you for that. And that definitely comes like with comfort level and how fast you speak versus how loud you are, or how quiet you are, how monotone you are definitely different things to keep in mind. So moving on to what did you observe about others? And one of the biggest things that came out was confident, which is kind of really interesting to kind of look back at what you were saying about yourselves versus, oh wait, did someone just say something? I think I'm lagging.
Oh, I was just going to say that the breathing monitoring tends to go out the window because I was trying to get through everything so fast. So I know I was in a monotone. I did not modulate my voice at all.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of things to keep in mind. So something that is interesting to look at about your personal observations, your self-assessment versus when you were observing other people. A lot of people mentioning nervous, chair swivel, monotone, pitch higher the voice, looking down, wiggling. There was a lot of different things like that versus the vast majority of you who reflected on each other mentioned that you were confident, mentioned that people that you were observing were comfortable, or that they had, I'm guessing this means good eye contact. So for those of you who were observing, or when you were not in the role of speaking yourself, would any of you like to elaborate a little bit on what you were observing and what you were noticing in other people?
I was one of the ones who put eye contact, and one of the things that I mentioned that for was because I noticed everyone's eye contact was a little different based on where they orient their screen. And so I don't know if you guys have tips on like the best way to engage with eye contact over Zoom and that sort of thing.
I can jump in there now, but
yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute, because eye contact is definitely challenging. If we just go with the idea.
I think in Zoom meetings, for me, it
My
feels
internet
kind
is
of,
kind of lagging. Okay, I'm just gonna.
okay. Okay, should I? Yeah, I think that what I when in Zoom or teleconferencing, I think looking at the camera like that, it kind of makes it feel weird. Okay, so we're used to, even when we FaceTime or talk to someone on our smartphone, we're used to that kind of, I'm looking now at the screen kind of look, not looking straight at the webcam. Maybe eye contact is relevant to one-on-one or face-to-face meetings, but in Zoom, I feel it's kind of weird looking straight at the camera. I don't know if anyone shares that feeling as well.
Abdul, I'll actually talk about this a little bit later, but you're 100% correct. Really measuring when you look into the camera can be very beneficial because it feels intimate to the point of invasion if I stare you down from this close. If you think about proximity here, this is you and I sitting across a small coffee table from each other. And I've never met you. And in presentations, you often have never met many of the people you're presenting to. And so if you sit here and stare them down the entire time, because A, you might have never met them, and B, you're now sitting, I'm leaning forward, which is even closer than sitting across a small coffee table from each other, that can feel very disconcerting for some people. There's a whole language of communication in Zoom where we accept not having eye contact.
Yeah.
We just accept that as the nature of the platform we're engaging on. And it's okay to not focus on the camera. And it's okay to stare at yourself if that makes you feel comfortable. And it's also okay to try to look around the room, as it were. All of those are acceptable in a Zoom platform. However, sitting here and reading something or clearly reading on the screen, those make your audience a little feel unnerved as well. We can tell when you're doing that as an audience.
Isn't it? Can it not be a generic rule that anything consistently is a problem? So if you look at the camera and then look away, if you look at the camera and look away, then it's still better than either not looking at the camera consistently or just looking at staring down at the camera. So I think just, or does that get distracting? I just thought like a broad brush good suggestion would be to keep changing what you're doing, or at least in terms of facial expression, and then you engage the audience, but it might be distracting.
The more variation you have, the more alive you feel to an audience. So changing it up is great. However, we also have all been on Zoom consistently for, I don't even know how long now. It's been 572 years that I've been existing on Zoom, it feels like. And so we kind of, we have collectively accepted the format. And if I'm looking at myself right now, I'm actually looking at Sarah right now to make sure she's not freezing up again. But if I'm looking at one person as the audience, you probably notice that I'm looking at the screen. But as long as I'm not clearly checking my emails, it probably won't make you feel uncomfortable.
And it's also another thing to kind of keep in mind that with Zoom, like it also depends on where your camera is. So for example, I'm using the camera that's on my laptop. Another person might be, or like I might have like the faces of all the participants like at the top toolbar of my screen. So right now I am looking at myself, or I'm looking at Amanda Rose, and that is still, it's still as if I'm looking straight at you. Whereas right now I am still looking at myself, but look at where my eyes are going versus right now. I'm still looking at myself. I'm just moving where that like box of faces is. So that's something to keep in mind of where am I looking? Do you see how my eyes are moving? And I haven't done anything. I haven't even moved my head. I'm just moving my Zoom screen around. And that's
Sarah,
something
I'm gonna go ahead and share
yeah. I
this
think I
presentation
messaged you
again.
that.
Oh, sorry. I don't think I saw it. My bad. Sweet. So I'm going to go ahead and come straight here since we're on this right now and blast through this because we've already covered some of it, and then I'll go back. But just some Zoom tips in general. First of all, check your lighting. If the light source is behind you, or if you're using a window, at some point in time, first of all, if you're using a window, the lighting will change over time. So you might start out very well lit, and then halfway through your presentation, you've become very pixelated and difficult to make out. If the lighting is behind you and you're backlit, that just makes it difficult for us to see you, and we kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable because we're paying more, it draws our eyes' attention more to the room than to you. Also, if you have like a desk lamp and the light is too harsh, throw a shade on it. I did the same thing Varsha did, and I got 2 like $15 ring lights off of Amazon, and that's what I'm using right now. And if you're one of those people, pay attention to mode as well. Like they have different types of white light. So this is like a more blue toned white. Oh, that's real blue. And then there's kind of this warmer color. So play with that and try to determine, like, I feel like this one makes me look incredibly washed out. So find a light that works, balance it on your face if you can. If you have a desk lamp, putting it right behind your laptop is great because it'll make sure that there's light on your face while you're presenting. And then you don't end up with issues like this, where the light source is clearly over here and I'm unbalanced. If it's directly behind your laptop, you won't run into those issues. So lighting is a big deal. Just pay attention to the lighting. If you don't have a single mobile lighting device in your room or in your house, just make sure that the light in the room isn't behind you. Sit facing that way if you can. Angles, Sarah already kind of touched on this. My laptop is currently on a bunch of books because when it's on the table, y'all are looking up my nostrils and looking at my ugly popcorn ceilings, and nobody wants to see that. It also kind of looks like I'm towering over and looking down at you, and that can feel uncomfortable for people to look at for a long period of time, which I'm sure you might have noticed if you, like me, have any students who call into class on their phones and you're looking up their nose the whole shot or the whole class. It feels a little odd to people. So just thinking about a different angle can be really helpful. And I know that, oh, I forget who it was, but somebody was talking about this with talking with your hands, or if you're a fidgeter, framing yourself to minimize those things or to use them to your benefit can be something that you do. So think about those things. I talked a little bit about intimacy and posture. If I'm here, this feels very much like I am not checked in to the audience. And I didn't move, I just leaned back in my chair. So thinking about that, thinking about the whole sitting across a small coffee table from people, being careful. If you're leaning in the whole time, like this is great. And we learn in an in-person classroom, leaning forward means you're an attentive student. Many of us have been socialized to do that subconsciously. But on Zoom, this starts to feel a little uncomfortable for people. So thinking about the fact that in Zoom, we interpret these things differently, you kind of have to reassess your posture and your body language. And again, we talked about eye contact. It is okay to change where you're looking. It is okay to look around your Zoom room. It is okay to look at notes and look back to the people you're speaking to. It's okay to look at the camera. Just make sure that whatever you're doing, you're not never looking at your screen and you're not always staring down the camera. That gets kind of unnerving to people. A lot of people are talking about virtual backgrounds. If your computer can handle a virtual background, go for it. You are not obligated to invite people into the privacy of your home. That's my opinion on that. We have students, and some of us maybe even have various access needs that make us feel safer if we are in a Zoom background. People can use Zoom backgrounds if they feel comfortable doing so. Be aware that like my computer's kind of old, and if I put on a Zoom background, if I'm wearing a dark shirt, all you're gonna see is from my collarbones up. And be aware also that I have a very, very good friend who is a very, very, very pale human being, and she cannot Zoom from certain rooms in her house because her computer cannot differentiate between her skin tone and her walls. So check those things beforehand and make sure that your computer can handle it. Somebody just pointed out that like sometimes your nose gets cut off because it of whatever reason. Check those things beforehand. Just check them beforehand. But honestly, if you're comfortable using a virtual background, go for it. If you're not comfortable using a virtual background, go for it. If you want to use a really super distracting background, that's a choice. Just know when the background is distracting from what you're doing. If it matches your content, great. If it seems like a normal room, people might not even notice because your square is only going to be about an inch big on their screen. So I take that one totally up to comfort. I'm going to jump back though. Oops, back too far. Wow, way too far.
What happened?
There we go.
Actually, Amanda, I guess so I just want to take a time check. So we were like 2 minutes until 3. So Sarah and Amanda have graciously said they can hang out for like in about another 10 minutes. And I guess I just want to kind of maybe take a feeling like, do people want to have some Q&A, or do you want them to kind of go over some of this stuff that they had already prepared? Feel free to just say in the chat, because I do want to give people some opportunity to ask questions. I also put the feedback form in there, and you can put questions in that form, and we can get back to you as well.
We've also kind of mentioned a lot of these items already. So if you have specific questions that are related to these, and we can leave the slide up for you to kind of look at, and we can share all this information with you as well. So what questions do you have? Or would you prefer for us to kind of continue going a little bit more about some things? Don't all jump at once. Okay, continue. We can ask questions in the chat. Okay, cool. All right, let's do that then. So very quickly, observing your natural behavior. Notice what you do that already works. Are you a naturally funny person? Do you talk in metaphor? Is that something that that people tell you do? Do you walk around a lot? Can you like stand up? Can you move? What is it that you do? Notice things about your current behavior, and notice things that people point out that are really engaging, or things that have been working really well, or things that people have pointed out that you've been like, oh, this is something that I wish I had. What are these things, and dial them up. Have it be a part of your personality. So if you know that you have to like, push your hair behind your ear, and you know this is a thing that you do, have that be a part of your personality. If you wear glasses and you notice that you constantly have to like push your glasses up, know that about yourself. And then do it consciously. And Amanda Rose is laughing because she does that. And have that in mind. Whereas if it's something that is distracting, and if it's something that you don't necessarily like, or if it's something like you fidget and you know that you like sway a lot, but like when I'm standing at a podium, I can hold my hands still and I can hold on to something, then keep that in mind. Then have something in front of you where you can hold your hands onto. So these are things about observing your natural behavior.
Yeah. I'll jump into audience engagement, which kind of goes a little bit to Gilly's question, but not directly. Talk to your room. When you're preparing content, prepare it for the room. If you know that you're speaking at a conference that has experts from all over the scientific fields, but people in the room might not be exactly the most familiar with your content specifically. Prepare to talk to people who know science, but not your content. It's very different, and I'm sure a lot of you have had the experience, if you are like me, a first-gen student, where you go home and your parents are like, what are you doing? And you try to explain it to them, and you have to like try again and try again and try again until you can find the verbiage that works for them. Do that work ahead of time. Have in your planning, have the way you want to say things. Plan out how you want to say it, but also think about backup plans for if your room doesn't seem like they're getting it. You'll know if people aren't getting what you're saying because they will either do the I'm fully checked out, or they'll give you the look of what are you saying? And if they need that, prepare yourself to adjust ahead of time. Also think about your audience. A lot of the time I present at conferences that are not theater specific conferences. That's very, very different than when I'm presenting at a conference that is a performance studies immersive research group. So know your audience and craft what you're saying to engage with the people who are likely to be in the room. That's a way that's going to make your communication much more effective. I'm sure many of us have heard presentations or been to conferences where we feel like people are talking down to us. And maybe we've been to conferences or presentations where we feel like the speaker doesn't care if we understand or not. They're just there to use all of their highfalutin language all the time. Don't be that person. Think about who might be in the room and craft what you're going to say for the people who are likely to be in the room. If you do that, if your audience can understand you, they'll be with you. We saw in the Mentimeter that most of the time people read each other as being confident. And somebody even said, my audience, we just spent the time pumping each other up. Your audience will generally do that for you if they think that you're actually there to talk to them. Sarah?
That kind of brings us into crafting your narrative. Why do people care? Like, great, you're doing this great, phenomenal research. Good for you. Why should they care? Why should anyone that is outside of your like dissertation committee or your lab group, or even just like your advisor, or even yourself, why should anyone else care about what you're doing, right? There's something that's there. There's something that's exciting, and there's a reason that you're doing what you're doing. And there must be a way, like you are not going through all this work to then not report your findings. You're doing a lot of really exciting research. And that is what is part of like creating your narrative of how do you construct your story. We're not here to tell you how to put your content together because you know your content better than anyone else does. And you know your own perspective, and your perspectives are valid, and your own ideas about your work and your research are valid. But you need to give your audiences a reason to care. So a lot of you are asking about like, what is the hook in a research? How do you get people to care about that? And when you're passionate about something, your enthusiasm shows. You're not a robot. And we don't need to see any more robots. We want people who are excited about research and are excited about what this work is. Because if you're excited, then someone else is going to be excited. And maybe you can get like a new collaboration at like a new conference, or maybe you can have like a new working partner, or learn something new. And when someone is engaged and they're excited, and that you can clearly tell they know what they're talking about, and this is the reason why they're telling the story in the way that they're telling it from their own personal perspective, then you get excited about that and you remember them. And that is something that's really important to keep in mind of how do you construct a memorable narrative about your work to show how you feel about that.
Sweet. And the other thing here is keep true to your core. Know who you are and root yourself in that. And if you get a question that throws you off, or if you feel nervous, root yourself. If I know that I have a nervous disposition in general, I need to be aware of that so that I can find a way to ground myself so that when that anxiety increases, I don't get overwhelmed by it. Maybe that's a grounding technique, like taking a deep breath. Maybe it's I train myself that when I feel overwhelmed, I'm just going to stop and turn a page and turn back and look back to the audience. Maybe it is a way that I hold a podium. Find something that can ground you. For me, I'm a pretty sarcastic person. Generally, if somebody asks me something and I don't know the answer to, I'm going to be like, sweet deal, happy meal. That's a great question. And people will chuckle because I said something weird, and then they'll be with me again. And that gives me a second to think and process. Another thing, you're in the sciences, right? And part of the process is putting together a hypothesis and testing it. And if it's wrong, trying something else, right? Part of our job as researchers is to identify what is known and what is yet to be known. That's what research is about. That's the conversations we love having, right? But we're really trained and socialized to not admit when we don't know something. And that needs a mind shift. We need to learn to be able to say, you know what, that wasn't within the scope of my research, but I would love to know if you or someone else is interested in investigating that path. Or, you know, that didn't fall within the scope of this experiment, but I'm going to look into that because that's really interesting to me. Thank you for raising that thought. These are conversations that peers within academia should be having. And even though many of us here are grad students, we should be allowed to have those conversations too. And if you have the guts to say that, you know what, that wasn't within the scope of my research, and I'm glad you raised that question. I find that really interesting. I'm going to look into that and I will let you know. I'd love to follow up in a couple months. Or, you know what, that wasn't really at all what we were investigating for, but I would love to hear if anybody else has an answer to that question. Having the guts to say that as a graduate student is going to set you apart from a lot of the graduate students who would, under pressure, either crack or under pressure, let's be honest, bullshit an answer. Because we can all tell when they're doing that, right? People know. And if you have the guts to say, I don't know, but I'm going to look into that, or I don't know, and I would love to follow up with you. That's going to set you apart as a presenter, and it's going to help you keep your cool if you give yourself permission to say, I don't know, ahead of time, and prepare yourself to say that. Practice it in your, phooey, what do you guys call them? Recitations? Is that a thing? What do you, when you guys, don't you do like with classes?
Like lab meetings, like group meetings?
Lab meetings.
Lab.
I didn't want to say rehearsal, but that's what it is in my world. And so what came out was an R word. There you go.
Rehearsal, guys. You're gonna come with us.
But use your lab meetings to practice that so that you can get comfortable saying, you know what? I don't know. And it's okay to not know anything or everything. You need to know something, but you don't need to know everything. That's the point of academia. If anyone in your field knew everything, your field would die because there'd be no more research to do, says the person in a dying field that still has a lot of research to do. So yeah, keep true to your core and allow yourself to shift your mindset about presenting. You just have to be the expert on what you're presenting on. That's it. You just have to be the expert on your work, not on everything else.
And the final thing that we kind of want to mention, because this has come out into the chat as well, about what kind of visual cues can you pick up on from the audience and how do you respond to people? And this is something that is so incredibly challenging, especially as we move into virtual conferences. Sometimes, or even we notice this with teaching, where sometimes people will have their video switched off and it will seem like I'm just talking to myself. And it's like, well, I don't know. I can't see their faces. I can't see like if they're moving around. Are they even looking at me? Is anyone smiling? Like, are they laughing at my jokes? Like, what's going on? And I can't tell. Same thing with a recorded presentation where it's just you and the abyss of no one, and you're just presenting. And it's like, they can just turn this off. You have no way to know if you're engaging your audience. But here are some tips to kind of like challenge that a little bit. If you have to record your presentation, maybe you can invite a few of your friends over and they can sit there in front of you and you can present it to them. Maybe that's what you do. Maybe you can watch it back a couple of times. Something with, if you're presenting live on Zoom, maybe you can do a little bit of interaction. So even if people have their videos turned off, maybe you can ask them to like, all right, use the thumbs up like reaction box, or with the raise hand function, or pop your ideas in the chat box. These are all things that you can gauge engagement by, or you can get like your audience's reactions and see how they're engaging with you, even if you don't see them. Because that's definitely a big thing of, you don't know if people are like wandering about, or if they've zoned out, or everyone who's like turning their videos off, like, where have they gone? Am I boring them to death? You have no idea. Another thing is to stop and ask for questions halfway through. Don't just ramble on for a whole hour long. Every like 10 minutes, every 2 slides, maybe ask, does anyone have any questions? Or what questions do you have right now? What can I clarify? Have that, build that into a kind of your repertoire so that you can kind of engage people in a different way, recognizing that this is a very weird platform and we kind of have to get used to it for a while. But yeah, find what works for you. And Molly was also asking about, sometimes you're just nervous right before you speak, and that's perfectly fine. Everyone gets nervous. We get stage fright, and that is a very real thing. And sometimes it helps to practice in front of someone. Sometimes it helps to know that someone who's really got your back is in the room and they're listening and they're here to cheer you on. And sometimes that can just be like trying out different breathing techniques, or kind of slowing down, taking a sip of water, or kind of shaking it out before you go on. So these are all different things that will come with practice, but the more that you start observing them in yourself, and the more that you become, because that's like the first step of being conscious of what you do and what you need to work on. Because if you don't acknowledge it, and if you're not conscious of it, then you'll never be able to change it. You'll never be able to fix it. And so these are things to kind of this is just a very introductory step. And this is only like an hour-long presentation, but we hope if this kind of gets you thinking about what are the things that you need to start thinking about in order to be more effective presenters.
All right, and with that, I just want to say thank you to our wonderful speakers that are taking the time out of their busy days to help us with this, and hopefully create some engaging scientific presentations across the board. So I'm going to put the feedback form link again in the chat, and so feel free to use that to ask any questions and we can get back to you. But really, really happy about the turnout for this, and I'm so glad that you guys all came. So I hope you got something out of it. Thank you.
And we've also put our emails in the chat. So if anyone's got any questions or just want to chat some more or whatever it is, please feel free to contact us. We're here, we're around. You can also find us on the theater website. So yeah, we're so grateful that we got to come here and speak with all of you today. And we're saving the chat.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Sarah. Does Zoom do that automatically?
Yeah, you're recording to the